Oh man, it is a wonderful time to be a Final Fantasy fan in general. I just got some great news. It looks like the story for Final Fantasy X Part 3, yes, Final Fantasy X Part 3, the story has already been written and it's only a matter of time before Square Enix starts working on it. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Hello guys, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that little bell right there so that you can get notifications every time I upload a video, okay? Enjoy. What is up guys, this is your boy Andy Matrix. Welcome to Andy RCB, where I talk about anime, movies, video games, geek culture, and Japanese culture. So, say what you will about Final Fantasy X Part 2 with Yuna, Riku, and Pain, you know, the trio, the girl trio. And some people have mixed feelings about that game because on the one hand, it's a continuation on Final Fantasy X, and you know Final Fantasy X is really popular. I mean, I dare say it's as popular as, or even more popular than Final Fantasy VII, at least in Japan. And some people love that game, some people hate that game. And sure, the girls are hot, but but not everybody liked the game. The battle system, they kind of changed it, and they didn't have the same level up system with the sphere grid. But the fact that the game was made shows you how popular Final Fantasy X really is, and it looks like Square Enix really does have a Final Fantasy X Part 3. And according to the Game Informer, it says here, in a recent interview with Famitsu, a Japanese gaming magazine, translated by the folks at RPG site, Nomura confirms the existence of Final Fantasy X Part 3 story. He says, if we are to make Final Fantasy X Part 3, we somehow have a synopsis written by the Final Fantasy X writer, Kazushige Nojima is his name. He added that it's sleeping right now, but the plot itself does exist. While he did confirm that the probability of returning to Spira is not zero, he did add that Square Enix is fully focused on Final Fantasy VII Remake at this time, with the second part still a large mystery and the total amount of entries is still unknown at this time. It could be many years before we ever see anything concrete about Final Fantasy X Part 3 still. The knowledge that a story is written and the desire to return to the narrative is good news for those hoping to return to Final Fantasy X series. So there you have it, folks. There you have it. Now, you guys remember that the little audio? I guess it was kind of like a bonus audio that you get in the game when you beat the game, right? There's like a little audio there. Well, some people, they said that they didn't like that. They didn't like that audio, and that audio was supposed to be part of the Final Fantasy X Part 3 story. And again, so there's just a lot of mixed feelings about that. They even have some new characters. They think there was Orin's daughter supposed to be in Part 3. Yeah, and it would just make sense that Square Enix would choose Final Fantasy X as for another installment, because besides Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII is basically the big dog, the top title of Square Enix, one of their best absolute Final Fantasy games or games in general. However, there was a poll asking the fans in Japan which Final Fantasy game was their favorite, and out of like 30 Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy X was rated the number one favorite, and number 2 was Final Fantasy VII. So Final Fantasy VII was actually second to Final Fantasy X in Japan. Now in America, Final Fantasy VII is obviously the most favorite. Right, so I'm really glad that they have this story written, and we're not gonna get a Final Fantasy X Part 3 until Square Enix is done with the Final Fantasy VII Remake. But most likely, once they finish with the remake, with Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, then maybe they'll start working on Final Fantasy X Part 3. What is up, everybody? Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can receive new future notifications. Check out the blog at ndrtv.com. Follow me on Twitter. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave your thoughts or anything you want to say right below this video in the comments below. This is Andy Matrix. Thank you for watching. Godspeed, everybody. Godspeed.